Everybody, I'm Jerry with Dub Bears Talk, and today I'm going to be going over a trend that I found that happens to be when the Bears have two first-round picks. Obviously, this year with Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, a lot of hype around them. But in history with the Bears, very consistently, I have good news for you. So before I get into it, don't forget to like the video if you like it. Comment down below who your favorite Bears legend is all time. Most people will have Walter Payton, but let me know your favorite Bears player of all time down below. We're going to talk about some historic Bears players today, and then subscribe for plenty more Bears content, as well as off-season content in the NFL. So stay tuned for that. Got some trivia coming out as well. So basically, the trend that I found with the Bears is within a couple years after they have two first-round draft picks, they've gone to the Super Bowl. So if you go back to the earlier years, not so much the same. The first year they had two first-round draft picks was in 1965 with Butkus and Sayers. That's obviously was touted for a very long time as the best draft ever. You come out with two Hall of Famers and two greats at their position. So not a Super Bowl involved there. But 1974, we have a guy named Wayman Bryant and Dave Gallagher. You guys probably don't know who that is. I don't know either because that draft did not turn out so good. But then we moved to 1979 where they draft Dan Hampton and Al Harris. Dan Hampton obviously becomes a big part of the team for the Super Bowl. So 6 years later, we end up in the Super Bowl, and Dan Hampton becomes a Hall of Famer and has a huge impact on that team, as well as Al Harris has an 11-year career, 9 of it being in Chicago, and a fairly successful career. Then the big one is in 1983. Jimbo Covert and Willie Gault are both selected, who both have a massive impact on the 85 Bears Super Bowl run team. And of course, 85 Bears from 83, that's 2 years later, is when, the Bears end up in the Super Bowl and they make that fantastic run just 2 years after having two first-round draft picks. A lot of other notable names in that draft as well in the second round. We got Mike Richardson, Dave Duerson was in the third, Tom Thayer was in the fourth, and then we ended up with Richard Dent and Mark Bortz in the eighth round when there was more than 7 rounds. So that has also been known as the greatest Bears draft class of all time. And now, you kind of have to look at this one with the pieces that we got. I think, Karan Amegadji, I can't say his name, but Karan I think can potentially be a starter and will at least have a good impact on the team. And then, Torrey Taylor, people saying he could be the greatest punter of all time. And then we have Austin Booker, who people compare to Max Crosby. And we have we have Max Crosby's defensive line coach with a guy that has very similar assets. So, even after Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, you also have Montez Sweat, who was acquired from a pick in this draft. And so I think between that, you have a lot of comparisons there with a lot of talent on the team that could be great. Moving forward, if in the next couple of years we could reach a Super Bowl. 89, we had Donald Wolford, who I didn't really know much about him. He had a 9-year career, and then Trace Armstrong was a great defensive lineman for the Bears. He had a 15-year career and ended up with 106 sacks total. So he had a very long, good career. Obviously, not much happened in 89, but the next time we had two picks, they both didn't really work out. Michael Haynes and Rex Grossman in 2003, but it doesn't matter because we did end up in a Super Bowl 3 years later. So of the 6 times we've had two draft picks, we've ended up in a Super Bowl within 6 years. And then obviously one that's not included, we ended up with Butkus and Sayers, who are both Super Bowl legend, not Super Bowl legend, but NFL legends and Hall of Famers, just greats of the game. So I think this is kind of a dumb comparison to make because you can't necessarily correlate that to the reason why that they were in the Super Bowl, but it is a trend that's happened, and I think the hype around the Bears and Caleb Williams putting his goal is 8 Super Bowls. I want to say that's a very high goal, but even we have a Nick Wright said I forgot where he said it the other day though, but he said that he thinks that the Bears could be talking Super Bowl in the next few years, and it could be at minimum playoffs this year. With Bears going 7-10 last year, and assumingly getting better at every not every position, but filling a lot of the needs that they had. It's not completely out of the question. I don't think that it is completely out of the question to say in 2 or 3 years that the Bears could be, moving towards a Super Bowl. DJ Moore will be around. Cole Kmet will be around. DeAndre Swift. Like, most of these guys that we just signed, the only one is really Keenan Allen that isn't going to be guaranteed to be here in 2 or 3 years. So I think with that being said, I think that this trend could continue with the Bears making a Super Bowl a few years after having 2 first-round picks. And I don't think that that's I don't think that that's like a goal. Like, oh well, if you have 2 first-round picks, you're more likely to go to Super Bowl. I'm not saying that by any means, but history, we're at about 50% right now for shortly after having 2 first-round picks. Especially when they hit, you end up in a Super Bowl. Of course, the 2003 instance with Rex Grossman, that was a huge bust, and he didn't work out, and we probably would have won the Super Bowl if we didn't have Rex Grossman at quarterback. But I thought it was interesting, and I know there's a lot of hype around the draft picks and this draft class in general. I really do like the Tory Taylor pick from Poles after further looking into it. When I originally saw it, I was very skeptical, and I wasn't super happy about it just because I felt like we had other needs. But when he went back and got Austin Booker, it really solidified it for me. And it made me realize that having a guy like Tory Taylor that can continuously flip the field and also put pressure on the offense almost as much as the defense, with having to back him up like that, if he can do that, which it should translate to the NFL, I think that's a massive weapon. And you're getting we got a top player at their position for quarterback and punter, and depending on how it goes, I don't think the Cardinals is a phenomenal situation for Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not a huge fan of Kyler Murray, so Rome Odunze could end up being one of the better wide receivers in this draft, depending on how it goes moving forward. I don't think that he's better than Marvin Harrison Jr., but I think it depends on the situation. So hopefully we can be in a Super Bowl in the next few years. I don't want to say it's guaranteed, but I also don't think it's out of the question. So let me know down below, do you think that we can be in a Super Bowl in the next 2 to 3 years? And what are your expectations for Caleb Williams coming into this rookie season? Because I think Bears football is on the up. We say it every year, but I feel like this year is different. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to, again, like, comment, subscribe, and bear down.